Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode. Today I have a special guest with me. I have Cari Vann, and she is an exercise physiologist with many years of experience with treating various different pain conditions and experience in Pilates and aquatic exercise and all those other types of movement. Her focus is on helping people feel better and move better, which is awesome, and focusing on preventing injury and managing pain through movement. So she is also the host of the Better Than a Pill podcast, which I love the name of the podcast, and she's the founder of the Movement Craft coaching program. And so it is an honor to have Cari join me here today on the show. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. I'm so excited to be here today.
So excited to have this conversation. So first of all, you've somehow come into this world. So what brought you here? What's your background in what got you into the whole exercise science sort of thing?
Yeah. So I've always been a natural mover, and this goes back to age 4 when my mom decided that she needed to do something with me because I was moving a lot. And she thought I was hyperactive, whatever you want to call it. And so she put me in a creative movement class, and I loved it. And that's where my first movement began. And then I got involved with things like dance and so forth. So I just love to move. And during this journey, I came into pain in my body at a very young age. I started having problems with my feet in high school due to dancing and so forth. And I didn't know what was going on. And we saw, a podiatrist, and we saw this doctor, that doctor, and, finally found out that I had a congenital disorder. I had a joint missing in my foot, tarsal coalition. And so that kind of spurred things. I, went to physical therapist. So at a young age, this is going back to high school, became pretty curious about finding out how to manage pain in my own body. Right. And,
Mm-hmm.
just went on to college. I continued with dancing, was a minor until my feet gave out. Okay. Pretty much. And then I was forced to get special braces for my feet, UCBLs. I had to wear hiking boots, but I still kept moving, and I found ways to do that. And then I started studying exercise physiology, and then my path, took many different diversions just to get solutions, not only to the feet, but with movement, I went through all phases. I abused movement over exercise
Mm-hmm.
and so I had to deal with repercussions to that. And it was just finding a balance in my own movement and finding ways to do that. And that led me to study the fascia release techniques that I teach, the therapeutic Pilates that I teach. And I studied a lot of other stuff as well. And I incorporate all of that in there because it helped my body. And I began to attract people into my world as I became a practitioner where they were also having problems with pain or injury and wanted to avoid injury. And so that's kind of a short note of where I began and how I ended up here, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So you actually had to deal with pain from a very young age. And I'm curious because a lot of people who struggle with pain struggle with lots of different features of that, but like the identity issue, like losing your identity, but also like navigating the healthcare system. And at such a young age, what was that experience like, in terms of trying to have to figure it all out? Like, I'm sure there was a lot of times where you felt like your pain wasn't getting taken seriously because if you're so young, like why should you be in pain kind of thing? Like what was kind of your experience with that side of things?
I learned that I I couldn't just trust the first doctor that I went to. That's
Mhm.
what I learned. I learned that I had to be my own advocate and be proactive. And that's what happened until I was able to get a diagnosis, at least to
Mhm.
that point. And that stuck with me. And I have also, again, this, went into even, I remember, I'll tell you a couple things. I remember this was in, I don't know, graduate school or something. I was at seeing a doctor, well-known doctor at John Hopkins Medical Center, and it was for an issue with my feet. And at that point, just had some questions. And I remember leaving there in tears, just
Mhm.
crying because I had questions, and his mannerisms were so harsh, and just, it was just, it didn't answer any of the questions that I really had, you know,
Mhm.
and I just felt kind of like, okay, well, now what? And so that's kind of like a turning point for me, where I felt like I could get so much information in terms of podiatrists, physical therapists, and orthopedic physicians. And then
Mhm.
I began to kind of delve elsewhere, and kind of found some holistic practitioners as well, and along the way, and kind of just, I would say, in a nutshell, I had to be proactive, and
Yeah.
think outside the box.
Yeah. At some point, that's the same kind of like journey that I see a lot of my clients dealing with and going through, is that like at some point they have that turning point or that moment where they realize like, okay, the healthcare system is not going to give me what I'm really looking for, because I keep hitting the same wall over and over again with them, not getting the answers and getting the gaslighting, kind of the mannerisms, like implying that this is all in your head or something like that. Like they keep hitting that wall. And at some point, there's that realization of like, I need to step outside of this healthcare system if I want to get anywhere, you know? And so, yeah. And I think it's unfortunate, when sometimes it takes some people so long to reach that point, unfortunately, because we value so heavily our medical system, and we keep our doctors like on this high pedestal. We trust them. But yeah, at some point that turning point seems to happen in a lot of stories and a lot of journeys. But how did that I'm like curious about like how that felt in terms of like, I don't know, like how it affected your identity, or like did you have end up like questioning your pain or your condition prior to making that switch, outside of the healthcare system? Were you at all like feeling like, obviously you felt like you weren't being taken seriously, but like what was that effect on you personally? And like did it feel traumatizing at all, or feel like, was that part of your journey?
Yes, I will say that I learned, like I said, at a young age, the doctors they could be harsh, and they made a call of a matter of fact, like, well, you're going to have to do this for the rest of your life, or you're not going to be able to do this, and that, and it was just really black or white, and I also, that being said, as I kind of grew with that, the information I received along the way was all valuable to some degree.
Mhm.
So from the orthopedic standpoint, we always talk about surgery, no surgery. In my case, happened to be no surgery would be better. The idea of a UCBL, one doctor saying that you're going to have to wear UCBL for life. And so in my mind, at a young age, you're thinking, so I'm only going to ever be able to wear hiking boots the rest of my life to cover up this big brace that comes up on my head.
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
and and here I am dancing. So there's a level of depression that
Mhm.
comes along with taking away something that you love. And that happened to be something that I loved. I loved to move and loved to dance. And so I fortunately was able to find things to replace that. And that's what I think the gift was, because I like to move so much. That brought me to the water. It also brought me to Pilates. It brought me to things
Mhm.
that I knew that I could do, protecting my joints, primarily my feet, and still benefit from the movement. And so, the physical therapist I saw along the way, I learned some valuable things from them as well. But I found that the doctors, I would say, there was a limit in what they could provide and what they knew, as I began to delve deeper into, retraining my own feet at one point with a woman I studied from. Imanizaki. She had I met her at a body therapy institute. I was studying her work, and learned how that, okay, wow, this is different. And so my journey kind of progressed, past even into early adulthood. I was still struggling with issues with my feet, and my feet got so bad at one point that I couldn't walk. I pretty much was going to work as an exercise physiologist, taking an elevator, and I had to think to myself, oh, great, I've got to get up this flight of stairs in my house one time before the end of the day. And so
Mhm.
I called her and I said, I'm flying to New York City, and I'm going to work with you directly because I need more, because I don't have, there's something missing. And it was in working with her that I was able to understand that I could actually build strength in my toes, retrain my gait, and maintain my fascia, and actually build function back in my feet. And yet when I saw the physical therapist that I work with that, eventually was able to progress into an orthotic, by the way, out of a UCBL and share this information, they just didn't understand. There was no understanding because it's just such a different approach that they had versus what I was learning. But the things I was learning in my body were a lot more helpful.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah, yeah. Like that, it's such a journey, and every experience is a learning experience. And I think that that is a good perspective to take on it. Like there's value at every provider, and everybody could provide you with something. And it's interesting to see you go from being told that you'll be in this brace the rest of your life, right? And then like, no, I'm not, because it's like almost like, hey, I proved you wrong sort of thing. Which is kind of cool. But you had to step outside of that system a little bit, and no doubt it affected your identity a little bit, because as a dancer, having to wear a clunky like brace and a boot with like, this isn't graceful. This isn't, I can't move well freely or anything like that. So like, I'm sure there was a little bit of like identity crisis that was kind of happening. One of the things that I know that a lot of people struggle with in terms of when they have pain and they're restricted in their movements is this like fear of movement, right? And so I think that, as a movement specialist, as somebody who works with people to improve their movement, prevent injury, and to treat pain, treat injuries as, using movement, there's still, I think a lot of people have that barrier of like, I'm afraid to move because XYZ. So, what was your experience with any kind of like fear in terms of related to movement? And B, how would you, say someone should go about addressing that fear?
yeah, great question. And yes, there was fear. And, just taking, for example, with my feet, I was so scared to take off my shoes when I started learning Pilates. I remember the teachers I'd work with, I say, I'm keeping my shoes on. Um, that's not really, what they expected to, to hear, because that's not, something they came across. And I'm talking about with certain exercises and things. And no, you're not touching my feet. So yes, there was this fear. And I think that with all fear, it's kind of like I had to, for me, get to understand my own body more, and understand and connect to my own body and understand what was going on. And it's through my experience that I had. And it was just over time. It was over time that I was able to, um, to manage that pain and build function. But there are many different schools of thoughts out there. And I think that, it is important in working with other people today, and knowing myself that we understand that everybody's coming from a different place, and to honor that, because, some fear, yes, there can be fear that is, false evidence appearing real. It's not real, it's not, but there is some fear that is there for a reason. And I think that, it's been my experience through going in and addressing the fear and understanding what's going on with the body, and understanding how I can get from point A to feeling better, that I've gained confidence in my own body that I can share with other people. This is what works.
Mhm.
This is what doesn't work, but still honoring people where they are. Um, it's really just as simple as slowing down and learning to connect to your own body. And pain can have many different forms, and there can be many different reasons. And it's just knowing, getting at the root of exactly what's going on. There's a lot of pain that can go away just simply with, like you're talking about, the power of our breathing, right?
Mhm.
So it's just understanding specifically what the pain is from and what it's due to.
Yeah. I agree 100%. Like identifying what are the root causes, what are the underlying causes, and if there is an underlying like structural or mechanical thing going on where you're like, having lots of wear and tear, or a pinched nerve, you don't want to aggravate that further by just saying, screw it, let's move and like push through it because I'm supposed to move. So let's go kind of thing. And then just like exacerbating the problem. But so there needs to be a respect for movement in that term, in that sense. But then also, like you said, it's teasing that boundary as close as you can, Because sometimes the fear, I'm afraid that this could exacerbate my pain or that this could cause further injury when there's not as much evidence for that. And so yeah, we have to kind of tease that boundary, modify movement so that it is safe from a structural standpoint. And I'm sure that's what you do in your work with people, and making sure that they're moving safely within their physical abilities, and recognizing what those are, because sometimes people may not even know. Like I just, like you said, like don't even touch my feet. They become very protective of it. And to some extent, something that I've noticed too is that, I don't know if you've noticed this as well, but you know, when somebody is really, really protective of a certain area, you can't force somebody to do something that they're afraid to do, because it's going to exacerbate the pain pathways. Like it's just going to feed back into the whole pain pathway. So forcing it is never a good thing. Even if we're not concerned about a structural problem, like it's not going to exacerbate you, it's not going to injure you from a structural standpoint, but just forcing your way through it only reinforces the fear, and it reinforces the pain. So it's a fine line, right? And so that's one of the reasons why I think people should work with experts who understand movement and physiology and, you know, anatomy, and yeah, that kind of thing. So, but
Yeah.
but fear, I think, is bigger than just this like fear of movement, right? So I think there's a lot of fears that creep in to the minds of people when you have pain. I don't know if you can speak to that at all in terms of your experience or what you've seen in your clients, but and how it, like, fear can kind of hold us back and prevent us from moving forward in different ways. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, goodness. Yeah. I mean, fear in general, just talking even outside the realm of movement, can be crippling. And it is that, in my experience, I mean, I have fear. I have a lot of fear, and that's just part of being human, in my opinion. For me, right?
Mhm.
And I think that with whatever, if we just talk about fear, is that it's actually working through the fear. That's pretty much what it boils down to, is that, getting from point A to point B. Sometimes it's going to require that, and that our tendency a lot of times, and I'll see this, is for people to want to run or away or avoid the fear. And let's just say any type of growth with our bodies, with movement, growth in general, is extremely uncomfortable and extremely frightening. So there's only one way, and it's to actually sometimes feel being uncomfortable for a little bit as you're moving through the fear. I don't think that there's any easy way out of fear. There isn't. And I think that we don't really know what we're capable of until we dive into those fears and we begin walking through them, whether it's with our body, for example, the feet, or back pain, hip pain, whatever it is, or if it's, something else, because everything is connected. As you know, the mind and the body, they're not separate. And I think that's really at the forefront of what I learned about even my own body. And that was in another piece, which I talked through, slowing down, because I didn't like to slow down. And I'll honestly say this: by nature, I am type A. I am high strung, and I believe in God. I have a pretty big faith, and God only gets my attention through pain. And so He has blessed He has blessed me, Alissa, with multiple pain issues and injuries because of this. Okay. But I guess the point I was getting to is that, for me to slow down and actually understand what it was like to connect my mind and body, I had to have 2 car wrecks, and then get into the place where I was really focusing on the foundation of our movement, which is our breath, our concentration, our focus, and going deep into our muscles, deep into our bodies, deep into our center. And a lot of times there's emotions there, and they're stored up. And so we can feel those emotions like you've experienced. I'm sure I've had clients that do this work and then they start crying, or, their emotions can come out. And I think that, it was in that slowing down piece that I really got a grasp. And that's where I really began to get even more control of my body. Yeah. So fear can take many different forms. And for me, it was several things, but slowing down, God getting my attention, through pain enough to want to understand and have to do some things differently, because like we can abuse movement and pushing through pain. I'm not a believer in it. And I've done it to my own body. It doesn't serve me, and it doesn't serve anybody that I work with. So, yeah, there's several factors there, but hopefully I helped answer your question a little bit.
I guess, yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I agree, wholeheartedly that fear is something that is never easy to overcome, and you have to work through it sometimes to get from A to B. And if you don't address some of those fears, you're just going to stay at A, and there's no room for growth. But anytime there's growth, there's risk involved, and so that's where I think where those fears come in. And so recognizing where are they rooted in, what is the the validity of it, addressing that, like naming the fear. I think all of that kind of thing, like when you kind of recognize that thing that is like holding you back, or like what is the belief, what is the thought, what is the the thing that is holding you back, it has less power, because then you can choose to step forward and say, okay, I'm ready to deal with that thing now, versus I'm not ready to deal with that thing right now. I don't have the tools, I don't have the knowledge, I don't have the support, or whatever it is to deal with that thing right now. And I'm just going to stay at A until I'm ready to go past that. I think that that's all part of it. But I'm glad you brought up your journey with faith, because I think that's something that is so important that we don't talk often enough about as healthcare providers, because we end up, I think society either looks at us as like, you're either in the science camp and the like healthcare camp, or you're in the faith camp, and you can't be in either one. You can't be doing both, because if you have faith, then that negates science. They don't mix. And but faith is a big part of my journey, and like you mentioned, I know for you it is as well. So as far as like just talking about it, like what's been a little bit about your faith journey in terms of like your experience with pain. And I know you mentioned that like it was a way for God to kind of communicate with you. But what has that been like? Like I can only imagine that it would like negatively affect your faith, but I'm sure that maybe is not true. I don't know.
Oh no. So I think that, for me, I've had to overcome a lot of adversity prior even to the, to actually for God to get my attention in general. And sometimes it's going to be different for everybody's journey. I had to go through some pretty rough times, and I know that we all do. I mean, in this life, in this world, we're going to have a lot of things that are coming at us. And I will say that I'm not used to always talking, like we had talked about, publicly about all these things, because I have been in a world, spent a lot of time at the Duke Medical Center, where I kept very quiet about my faith because I was shunned upon, to share that unless I really knew somebody. And so, yeah, you're exactly right about the division between we're either science or faith. And I think that it can be a combination of both. And that's, I mean, for me, it's just I'm just going to say this, is that, yes, I believe in the movement that I teach and everything. And I think it's important, but really what's most important at the end of the day, and everything that trumps everything, is my faith, is feeding my soul. Without that, really, I don't have anything. And so if we kind of clear the slate out, that's really where I have to begin. And that's really where I have to begin even my day, and revisit that a lot, because for somebody like myself, my brain can become a very bad neighborhood very quickly. Mm-hmm. All right. I'll just put it out there like that. And I can take things back into my own hands very quickly, because I like to. So the struggle is very real for me personally. I have to turn things over. I'm as I develop my relationship with God, and I'm actually, I believe in Jesus, and so forth. And thank goodness for that, because I am a pretty big sinner. Okay. And so it's like, it's exciting to know that, that I don't have to be perfect. Yeah. I can make mistakes. I can learn from mistakes. I can have a relationship with God where I can get guidance, and know that I don't have to have all these answers. I really don't know how to navigate it without that. I mean, and again, I want to pull away from God very easily. I can, and I have to come back to it. I have to keep a discipline of, practicing gratitude. I have twin boys that are 11, and we say what we're grateful for at the end of the day, because I want them to understand how important that is. We don't get our self-worth from our achievements, from all of these things. It goes deeper than that. And that, transfers to the clients that I'm working with. Everybody's going to be at a different place. And, I just encourage people to start with some level of connection, whatever that may be, maybe coming in from different places, and expanding upon that, because like I said, I really feel that is the most important part of our wellness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think spirituality is a big piece of overall wellness in general. And like, if we're not, connecting in that way, then that can be a huge part where you don't feel well, and it can affect your health, and your health can affect your spirituality. And that's something that I often think about, that people might be struggling with, is the fact of like, if God is good, then why would he give me pain? And so I you mentioned that God gave you pain, but like, how has that been a part of your journey, and feeling like, pain has been a part of your journey and your calling in a sense? Has that brought you closer to God or further away from God?
100% closer. And it's not only now, I feel like the pain, whether it was my feet, my back, my hips, my knees, or whatever, the neck, whatever it was, I feel like those are now gifts, because in each experience, I learned a lot of things through being proactive and finding solutions that I can now share with other people. There's so
Right.
much value in that, and that's exciting to me. So that I feel that God has called me to serve people in this manner.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only been through my experience and saying, wow, this works. This person, this is helping them. And that's where I've gained the most confidence. And that's just been over a series of years, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, wow. And so it's a gift. And I feel that I may have wanted to run away from the gift, because when we have the fear again, we want to run. And yes, I have tried that. But God has always brought me back to the place where he's like, no, you really have a lot to share here. You have a lot to offer. So it's more of, now I feel like almost a ministry in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is exactly. And I think I can relate in a lot of ways, because that's similar to my story. Like, I feel like everything that has happened in my path has been kind of choreographed by God, and like the good things and the bad things. Like, all of the times where I'm like, God, this sucks. I don't understand why you're doing this to me. And I blame him, even though it might not be him. I never,
Right.
you never know if God gave you pain or he's just using the pain to guide your path. But it's interesting, hearing your story and hearing how you started off as a young girl in love with movement. And then like, I feel like it's just a beautiful story in that, like, I feel like God is the one who made you. He made you the way you are, loving lover of movement. And then in order to become a healer, he used your pain and that experience to get you to help heal other people, which I think is just a beautiful story. And I think I know, anyone listening might be hearing your story and hear you say like pain is a gift, and be like, no, I can't agree with that. Like, maybe that's not where they're at right now. And it's hard to have that perspective when you're in those kinds of like low moments. But I completely can like agree with a lot of what you're saying, especially when seeing that journey in the people that I work with, where when they get on the other side of pain, can kind of live out what they were meant to do in this world. Like, when you overcome that, and whether that means that you're a school teacher, or you're maybe I don't know, like, there's so many things that you can do that provide that like positive part of the world, but pain is kind of like the thing holding you back. And so I think everybody has their journey and their path, whatever you believe in, whether that's the same God we're talking about or somebody else, the universe. Like, we all have like our paths, and we respect that everybody has different beliefs, and that's okay. But it's I think for those who have struggled with their faith, it's good to have these kind of conversations to share this, because, That's been your experience. That's been my experience. And that's what I've seen with a lot of people on this journey, is that God can use it for good, whatever that is. And that doesn't make him a bad guy. He doesn't mean that he gave you the pain, right? But I think, yeah, it's been interesting for me to see all of that kind of in my experience of working with people in the chronic pain population. Um, so yeah. Um, well, I think this was a very interesting conversation, and getting into lots of different topics today. And getting to hear your story has been really interesting, and I think a lot of people can relate to it. But now that you're on the other side of pain, you're helping people with pain. We want to hear a little bit more about your program and how you help people. So tell us a little bit about your stuff, what you do.
Oh, sure. So I think that where I feel I'm really gifted at this point is that helping people with safe options when it comes to their exercise. And I believe that there are pillars of pain-free movement. And I think that it's very individualized. I think a lot of people come in and, they're coming from different places. Well, there are certain things we need to do to avoid neck pain. Okay. There are things we need to do to help with our backs. And there's things that we also need to avoid. And I think that it's knowing what those things are and knowing the individual you're working with and being able to progress them accordingly, because not every movement is good for everybody. Not every position is good for everybody. And it's understanding those things, honoring that, and also making wise choices when it comes to our movement. A lot of the things that I teach are designed to help sustain our body so that we can move more, right? But then we go to move more, and I love to talk to people about this, is that running may not be the best choice for you. Okay.
Mhm.
I don't run. And most of the people I work with tend not to either. Okay. Maybe you're gifted and you can run, but I'm looking at more joint friendly options. So walking, water running. Okay. That is the one place that I do run, is in the water. Looking at, things that we can do to enjoy movement, to get movement into our lives. And because movement is healing on many levels. Like, we need to move. I call it overall movement, whatever you want to call it, cardiovascular exercise, could be what you want to call it. That's good for clearing our minds, lowering anxiety, dealing with depression. So that just movement and not having to really do anything else but move can be, so beneficial. And then again, implementing the work that sustains that movement is key. So really, what I like to do is help people know that they can integrate these tools into their lifestyle, into their life in pieces, so that they have the total picture, that they have all the tools they need to manage pain and prevent injury. Because pain can come back. My pain is not completely healed. I'll have different things come my way, and I'm always learning. But then, a lot of times this boils down to like, oh, I'm not doing my homework. Oh,
Mhm.
I know, for myself, I need to do certain things in order to, for example, go back to the feet. I need to maintain, a foot fascia regimen for my feet, and I encourage other people to do too, or otherwise I'm going to have problems. Okay, so it can
Mhm.
be as simple things like that, right?
Mhm.
So like we had talked about before, there's a lot of things that we can do for our bodies with movement, and like we talked on our together in the past, is that yes, there may be other things that you need as well, right? So that at some point, the movement still is going to be helpful. But, if you're having, for example, with a lot of people you work with the chronic pain, then delving into other avenues, I think, is key as well. But
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, getting after whatever the underlying causes are, because I think that's one of the downsides, I think, of our world, our culture, is that in our society, a lot of people are always asking me like, are like looking for the one cause of like, what's the one thing I need to do, or what's the one thing I need, what's the one thing wrong? And it's like multiple things, friends. Um, you have multiple, when you have pain, you have multiple problems that need to be addressed. And you have to go as deep as you can into those different problems. So like movement is going to be a component. We need to be addressing that component, no doubt, safely. And we need to be addressing that. We have a nervous system. We need to address that. If you have mood, emotional, like trauma, if you have like, those types of issues, the mental health side of things, addressing that separately with an appropriate therapist or provider or counselor. If there's, there's other aspects of pain beyond those things as well. So we just need to be identified, like nutrition, for example, if that's a component, getting that on board. Movement isn't going to solve the nutrition problem, right? Maybe a
Exactly.
little bit, they overlap, right? But like the mental health component isn't going to solve the movement component. So like you have to have all of the pieces in place. And so you're the person for the movement component. You're here to help you get that piece on board while still keeping in mind the other important pieces as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that, I like what you said is that it's not just one thing, even when it comes to our movement. It's like, okay, just worked with a client, but like before I got on here with you, like, okay, we're working with, let's say it was a back pain. Yeah, we're gonna work on 4 levels. We're gonna work on connecting to those deep muscles that stabilize your body. And yeah, we're gonna have to slow down now and focus on our breathing. And that can be uncomfortable. And so, and then adding in mobility stretches, adding in fascia release, and then progressing to center, whole body strength. So it's not just one thing, even when it comes to movement. And then because, when we're trying to integrate new habits, whatever they are, into our life, that takes a different realm. That's, having somebody hold you accountable to doing those things. Right. And then progressing you accordingly so that you are getting those habits into your life, and then they're becoming easier, and then we can build upon them, and now you're seeing that you're benefiting, and and so on.
Yeah, like you said,
So
if you don't maintain the regimented fascia program that you do, you essentially pay for it. Like it has to become the lifestyle change, and a lot of support is necessary to get you to that point in order to do it. Otherwise, it's like a diet, and that people fail diets. Diets are meant to be failed. It's not a diet, it's a lifestyle change sort of thing where it needs to become like a part of your lifestyle, but not to a point where it's like set it and forget it, because it's constantly having to be tweaked and modified as you progress and change and go through different seasons. So I think that's why having like support, a professional, somebody to work with, somebody to guide you in that journey is really, really important. So thank you for having this conversation today. Where can people find you if they want to kind of look you up, follow you on Instagram, or kind of learn a little bit more about your program and how to work with you? Where can they find you?
well, movementcraft.com, and I'm on all the social platforms at movementcraft as well. And then I'm also the Better Than a Pill podcast. I'll be sharing information there as well too.
Yes, awesome. And we love podcasts, so go check that one out. All right, well, awesome. We love having you here today and having this good conversation and getting into some of the topics that nobody wants to talk about, that are a little uneasy, the fear and the faith issues and all of that. But it's good conversation. So thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome. I was so glad to be here. Thank you, Alissa.
Yeah. All right, everybody, have a good one. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Bye for now.